This shadow ritual unlocks 5D faster than light practices ever could. There's something that most people on the spiritual path don't want to talk about. Something raw, something ugly, something beautiful in its chaos. They'll show you the crystals, the light codes, the high-frequency mantras. They'll show you their vision boards and their downloads from the Pleiadians. But very few are willing to look at what truly accelerates spiritual evolution. Not the light, but the shadow. Not the affirmations, but the confrontation. The real shortcut to 5D. It isn't love and light. It's this raw, unfiltered, soul-stripping shadow work. And it begins with a ritual so few dare to perform, yet it holds the exact frequency needed to rip through the illusion and anchor you into a dimension that isn't accessed through light, but through depth. Let me take you back to the first time I performed the ritual. I was in an abandoned monastery on the edge of a forgotten mountain range. No electricity, no signal, just silence. And myself. I had tried all the high-frequency practices, the breath work, the sacred geometry meditations, the binaural beats. I had fasted, I had prayed, I had visualized. Still, something was missing. I could feel the veil, but I couldn't pierce it. Until I stopped running from what I feared the most, my own shadow. That night, I sat, candle lit, mirror in front of me, and began the ritual that would change everything.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
This ritual doesn't start with calling in angels or guides. It starts by calling in yourself. Not the self with a capital S, not the higher self, but the hidden self. The version of you that you buried beneath years of pretending, achieving, pleasing, and performing. The version of you that you decided was unlovable, so you locked it in a closet and called it healed. But it's not healed. It's hungry and it's waiting for you. You start by staring into your eyes in the mirror, not to admire, not to analyze, but to see, to witness, to confront. And here's where the shift begins, because the eyes don't lie. If you gaze long enough, something ancient starts to stir. The subconscious begins to rise. You'll see flashes, memories, emotions. And then the voice starts. The voice that says, "You're not enough, you're too much, you failed, you're a fraud." That voice isn't the enemy, that voice is the key. Most people run at this point. They flinch, they distract themselves, they grab their phone, they drink water, they look away. But if you stay, if you hold your gaze, if you allow the discomfort to build without blinking, you begin to slip through, not out of your body, but deeper into it, deeper into the rooms of your psyche you've boarded shut. And that's when the ritual begins to open. You're no longer performing spirituality, you're living it, you're bleeding it. One of the most misunderstood truths about 5D is that it's not actually higher, it's deeper. It's not floating on clouds of bliss. It's standing in your own fire and saying, "I won't run from myself anymore." That's the frequency that collapses timelines. That's what bends reality. And the more shadow you integrate, the more power you reclaim. Because here's the truth. All the power you've ever given away through shame, guilt, fear, avoidance is still yours. It's just trapped in the shadow. And this ritual, it's a jailbreak. You'll start to feel it. Your body may tremble, tears may come, rage may rise. You might laugh, you might scream. Don't stop it, don't analyze it, Let it move, let it speak. Let your shadow say everything it's been silenced from saying. This is not about becoming someone new. This is about remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide. And once that version of you is heard, truly heard, you will feel the shift. Your frequency will snap, your energy will recalibrate, and the veil will begin to thin. The second phase of the ritual is even more intense. Once the emotional purge begins, you must speak the truth out loud. Not the spiritual truth, not the Instagram truth, the real truth. I'm still angry. I'm still scared. I don't know who I am. I want to be seen. Say it all, out loud, into the mirror, into the firelight, into the silence. Because sound is the bridge between dimensions, and when your voice carries the raw vibration of truth, it opens doors no mantra ever could. You're not just talking, you're activating. The words become spells. The breath becomes fire. Your truth becomes an offering. And then, stillness. Not the kind you meditate into, the kind that descends, the kind that claims you. You'll feel the intelligence of the shadow wrap around you, not to harm, but to initiate. You'll feel watched, not by spirits, but by your own soul finally seeing itself in its full, wild, unedited form. And this is the moment. The dimensional breach. The lock clicks open, and something ancient, something real enters. So let me ask you something right now. When was the last time you truly saw yourself? Not the curated version, not the spiritual persona, but the raw, ugly, terrifyingly honest version of you. When was the last time you let that version speak? Cry, roar? Because if you haven't, then you haven't even scratched the surface of your power. This shadow ritual isn't just a shortcut. It's the source code. It's the master key to the grid we call the fifth dimension, not because it bypasses light, but because it includes the dark. Light without shadow is illusion, but when you merge the two, you become unstoppable. In the next part, I'll show you what happens after the ritual, the signs that you've unlocked the gateway, the tests that follow, and the reason why most people turn back right when it starts to work. After the ritual, the tests, the triggers, and the truth that forces you to choose. So you've done the ritual, you've sat in front of the mirror, you've screamed, cried, confessed, released, you've cracked yourself open in a way most people never will, and for a moment you felt it. That shift, that strange stillness, that eerie sense that something sacred had been unlocked inside you. But here's where most people misunderstand the path. They think the ritual is the transformation, that once you've wept into the mirror and faced your shadow, you're free, you're awakened, you're done. But that's not how it works. The ritual is not the end, it's the gate. And once you walk through that gate, the real journey begins. Because the moment you awaken that much truth inside you, reality doesn't just applaud, you get tested. Not by some vengeful universe, not by karma, but by your own subconscious. The parts of you you didn't even know were still operating in the background. Your old patterns, your deepest wounds, your unhealed responses. They rise to the surface like steam from a volcano. You've stirred the underworld, and now it wants to see if you've really changed. You'll be triggered in ways that hit harder than ever before. People from your past will show up. Old habits will tempt you. Situations that used to keep you stuck will circle back, asking a single, silent question. Have you really evolved? Or are you just performing transformation? And this is where most turn back. Because the light codes were easier, because the affirmations didn't bite, because downloading from the Pleiades never made them feel like they were being ripped apart from the inside. Shadow work is the most advanced spiritual practice on the planet, not because it's complicated, but because it's unforgivingly honest. It doesn't care about how many followers you have, how many retreats you've attended, or how many chakras you've memorized. It only wants to know, can you live your truth when everything in you wants to run? After the ritual, your nervous system changes, your perception shifts, you start seeing through things. People's masks, your own excuses, the subtle manipulations we all engage in to avoid feeling. And this can be overwhelming. You'll feel raw, exposed, like your skin has been peeled away. You'll walk into a room and instantly feel the energy like a wave crashing into you. You'll hear someone speak and know they're lying to you or to themselves. And that knowing, that sensitivity will feel less like a gift and more like a burden until you learn how to hold it. Because the truth is, you've just become a frequency tuner. You've activated your shadow sight. And now the world looks different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The test is whether you'll numb that sight or honor it, whether you'll pretend not to know what you now know, whether you'll go back to the old you because it was easier, or step fully into the unknown, where your power actually lives. This is the point where you decide who you really are, not with words, but with choices. Will you keep the promises you made to yourself in the mirror? Will you honor the parts of you that no longer want to be silenced? Will you stop betraying your own soul just to be liked, accepted, or understood? These are the questions the post-ritual phase demands. And they're not hypothetical. Life will serve you moments that force you to answer them in real time. You'll be tempted to call it a breakdown. You'll wonder if you did something wrong. But what's really happening is an energetic reordering. The old you is collapsing. The energetic scaffolding that held your false self together is falling away. And yes, that feels like chaos, but it's not chaos, it's clarity. You're not falling apart. You're falling into alignment. So let me ask you something now. When life throws you back into your most painful pattern, will you choose the comfort of familiarity or the discomfort of growth? Will you protect your old identity or will you die to it? Because that's the choice. Every moment, every breath, every trigger is a test, not from God, from you. From the version of you who sat in front of the mirror and dared to speak the truth. In the next part, we go deeper. What happens when you say yes to the truth again and again until it burns away everything false? What happens when you stay in integrity long enough for the light to return, not as a fantasy, but as a power you've earned, becoming the storm? When you no longer fear the dark, you transform the light. There's a rare moment on the path when the fear breaks. Not because it disappears, but because you stop needing to run from it. You've faced it enough times now. You've watched it rise in your chest like a tidal wave, threatening to drown everything. And instead of retreating, you breathed, you stayed, and it passed. And that's when everything shifts. Not just your mind, not just your body, but your energy. Something ancient inside you wakes up. Not the version of you trying to ascend, but the version of you that remembers it never had to. The part of you that was always divine, even in your most human moment. That's when you stop trying to escape the dark. That's when you become the storm. You realize the dark was never here to hurt you. It was here to refine you. It was the gatekeeper to your gifts. It was the container for your power. The light you kept chasing, it was hiding underneath the very shadow you feared. And once you understand that, truly understand it, the game changes. You stop negotiating with the light, you stop begging for peace, you stop performing positivity, and you start embodying truth. Because now you know, light without shadow is shallow, but light through shadow, that's power. This is where the ritual becomes a lifestyle. It's no longer something you do once. It's a state you carry. You don't need the mirror anymore. You are the mirror, and the world starts reflecting back to you in strange and powerful ways. You'll notice people begin to shift in your presence. They'll get emotional without knowing why. They'll confess things. They'll feel seen in ways that make them uncomfortable and also heal. That's because you're no longer offering them your persona. You're offering them your presence. And presence is the rarest frequency on earth. But carrying this frequency comes with responsibility. You'll be invited into spaces that test your ego from the other side. People will praise you. They'll put you on pedestals. They'll call you a healer, a light worker, a guide. And if you're not careful, your shadow will wear a new mask. The spiritual ego is more seductive than the material one because it hides behind service. But it's the same trap. The moment you start needing to be seen as enlightened, you've lost the very thing that made you powerful, your authenticity. So stay humble, stay grounded, stay human. That's the paradox of true power. The more awakened you become, the more human you must be willing to stay. Cry when it hurts, laugh when it's funny. Take a break when you're tired. Stop trying to be a brand and be a being, because the world doesn't need more spiritual performers. It needs real ones. People who've walked through their own fire and come out with their hearts still beating, and you'll be tested again. Don't think you're done. The more you evolve, the more subtle the tests become. One day it's your anger, the next it's your pride, then your need to be right, then your fear of being alone. The shadow doesn't disappear, it deepens, and the deeper it becomes, the more light it can hold. That's the real reward, not floating above the world, but being able to walk through it without flinching. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer this with your whole body, not just your mind. Are you willing to lose every identity you've built in order to become who you really are? Not just once, every day, every breath. Are you willing to become the storm, not to destroy, but to clear? Are you willing to hold so much truth that everything false falls away in your presence? Because if you are, then you're not chasing 5D anymore. You're anchoring it. You're embodying it. You're walking into rooms and shifting the atmosphere. You're becoming the answer to prayers people haven't spoken yet. And you're not doing it by being perfect. You're doing it by being whole. This is the moment where you stop being a seeker and start being a signal. You're not trying to find the next practice, the next teacher, the next activation. You are the practice. You are the teacher. You are the activation. And the world will know it, not because you say it, but because you live it. In the final part, we'll go even deeper. What it means to lead with shadow wisdom, how to transmit truth without words, and why the most advanced spiritual beings are always the most silent, the most grounded, and the most real. The final transmission, how to walk as a living portal in a sleeping world. There's a kind of silence that comes after the fire, not an empty silence but a full one, a silence that vibrates, that listens, that sees. When you've walked through the shadow ritual, when you've faced the tests, when you've stopped running from the dark and started carrying it like a chalice, you don't need to speak much anymore. You become the message. You become the transmission, and the world feels you before it hears you. That's when you realize this isn't about ascending out of the world, it's about arriving into it, fully for the first time. You don't float above suffering, you walk through it with presence. You don't bypass conflict, you meet it with clarity. You don't reject the parts of yourself that still struggle. You hold them like sacred children because you know the real mastery isn't in suppressing your humanity, it's in honoring it. You are no longer trying to be light. You are the container of both light and shadow, and in that integration you become whole. And wholeness is magnetic. People will start to come to you differently now. Not because you advertised your awakening, not because you built a brand, but because your frequency called them. You'll notice that your presence alone has the power to soften defenses, to stir memories, to activate dormant codes in others. And you won't always know what to say. That's okay, because true guidance doesn't come from intellect, it comes from alignment. It comes from guiding intuition and embodied intimacy, the kind that comes only from awareness. When you're fully aligned with your essence, your very breath becomes a transmission. But here's the secret no one tells you. Once you become a living portal, the world doesn't get easier. In some ways, it gets more intense. You'll feel more, you'll sense more. You'll see the unconscious patterns playing out in real time, and it can be heartbreaking. Watching people repeat the same cycles, watching the world cling to pain it doesn't understand, you'll want to save them. But that's not your role. Your role is not to rescue, it's to resonate, to embody the frequency of truth so fully that others remember they can do it too. Leadership in this dimension isn't about authority, it's about authenticity. The more real you are, the more space you create for others to drop their masks. And in that space, healing happens, not through force, but through resonance. That's what it means to walk as a living portal. You don't need to convince. You don't need to explain. You just are. And yes, you'll still be human. You'll still get tired. You'll still grieve. You'll still have moments where the old wounds whisper. But now, you don't react from them. You respond with them. You've integrated the shadow. You've turned your wounds into wisdom. You've alchemized your pain into presence. And that presence is worth more than any technique, any mantra, any light code. So I ask you now, with everything you've become, can you remain open when it would be easier to shut down? Can you love when it would be safer to withdraw? Can you stay present when the moment is uncomfortable, spacious when the world is rushing, kind when the ego wants to defend? Because if you can, you're doing the real work. You're not chasing 5D, you are 5D. Not as a trend, not as an aesthetic, but as a lived, embodied, grounded frequency that walks slow, speaks clear, and radiates truth. You don't need to escape this world, you need to enter it fully, carrying the codes you unlocked in the dark. This is what the shadow ritual was preparing you for all along. Not just to awaken, but to return, with your eyes open, your heart clear, and your soul remembering what it came here to do. You are not just a seeker anymore. You are a transmission, and the world is listening.